In today's lesson, we will be learning how to solve multiplication problems using the array model strategy. Although I have taught how to solve multiplication problems with repeated addition in the past, today I want to teach how to solve with the array strategy. Using arrays are a better way to solve multiplication problems because they allow you to see how many numbers or how many objects are being multiplied together. An array is any arrangement of things in rows or columns, such as square tiles or blocks. In an array, rows are the objects that are arranged horizontally, which are side to side. Columns are the objects that are vertical. In this array with the triangles, there are two columns, which are the groups that are vertical, and then there are the rows, which are arranged horizontal. If we were to solve the problem 3 times 4 using the array strategy, here's what it would look like. Using the array strategy to solve the problem, we would have 4 columns and 3 rows. The first factor, which is 3, would be represented by how many circles are in each column. Now columns are the groupings that are vertical. The second factor, which is 4, would be how many circles are in each row. Now, 4 is how many circles are in the groups that run horizontally. To find the answer to 3 times 4, we would multiply together the number of rows, which are 3, and the number of columns, which are 4. The completed problem using the array strategy after solving would be 3 times 4 equals 12. Before we start using the array strategy to solve some problems, I want to address any misconceptions or many errors that you might have before we start solving. One error that I see quite frequently is that students tend to count the number of blocks that are in the array instead of multiplying together the number of columns times the number of rows. When we use arrays, we are not counting the number of blocks that are in the actual array. We need to multiply together how many rows, which are the horizontal lines or the horizontal objects, times the number of columns, which are the vertical objects. Although we can find the same result by counting the number of blocks, we are not using the array strategy to solve the problem. Another misconception that I see is that when students try to make an array with problems that use the commutative property, such as 2 times 3 and 3 times 2, they make the same array. Although these two problems achieve the same result, they do not make the same array. If we remember, the 3 and the 2, which are the first factors, are how many rows the array is going to have. The second factor in the first problem, which is 2 times 3, is 3. The 3 would represent how many columns there are. If we were to compare that to 3 times 2, we would notice that the number of columns would be different. In 2 times 3, there are 3 columns, and the array for 3 times 2 has 2 columns. Although these two problems do have the same answer, which is 6, when we draw the arrays will look different. So let's go ahead and use an example of how we can use the array strategy to solve a multiplication problem. Let's go ahead and use the problem 3 times 5. In the problem 3 times 5, the first factor, which is 3, are going to be how many rows or horizontal groupings there will be in the array. The second factor, which is 5, is how many columns there will be in the array. If we were to use the array strategy to solve the problem 3 times 5, here's what the visual would look like. We would have 3 rows, which is the first factor, 3, and then we would have 5 columns, which is the second factor, 5. To solve the multiplication problem, we need to multiply together the number of rows times the number of columns. Since there are 3 rows and 5 columns, we need to multiply those numbers together to get our answer. If we were to multiply 3 times 5 together, we would get 15. I have also included some online games that you might enjoy that uses the array strategy in order to win. The first game is Wibbly Wobbly Pobble Arrays. Make multiples of Bobbly Pobbles. In this game, you have to help a mythical creature get his friends through the palace gates. In order to get his friends through the gates and to the castle, you have to make arrays. If you do not make the correct arrays, you will not be able to get his friends through the castle, which will delay you winning the game. The second game that I have shown is Math 3 Under the Sea. This is a board game. In Math 3 Under the Sea, you have to make arrays with a multiplication problem that you have been given. If you do not make the correct array for the multiplication problem, you lose a turn and you do not get to move along the board game.